The first thing I heard was Lily screaming. Not the kind of scream a kid does when she's pretending to be scared in a game. The real kind. The kind that comes from somewhere underneath language. From a body that understands cold and fear faster than a mind can process why. I was in the kitchen pulling the ham out of the oven when I heard the front door slam. And then I heard her voice through the wall, muffled, desperate, pounding on wood. "Grandpa, please, please, it's cold." I dropped the oven mitts on the counter and ran. By the time I got to the front hallway, my father was standing with his back against the door, arms crossed, jaw set the way it gets when he has decided something and does not intend to discuss it. Through the small window in the door, I could see my daughter standing on the porch in her thin red Christmas dress. No coat, snow already collecting in her dark curls, her small hands pressed flat against the glass. "Dad," I said, "open the door. She needs to learn there are consequences. She's 8 years old." It's 19 degrees outside. She broke Janet's snow globe collection. 40 years of collecting, gone in 5 seconds, because she can't sit still for one meal. I looked past him through the window. Lily's lips were already going pale at the edges. Her breath was coming in short, visible clouds. She was not pounding anymore. She had stopped pounding. She was just standing there, shivering, looking at the door like she had stopped believing it would open. I have never moved that fast in my life. I shoved past my father, fumbled the deadbolt with hands that did not feel like my own, and threw the door open. Lily fell into me, actually fell, her knees giving out the second she felt my arms, and I went down with her onto the porch boards, wrapping myself around her like I could undo the last 5 minutes with my body heat alone. "I've got you. I've got you, baby. I've got you." She was shaking so hard I could feel her teeth chattering against my shoulder. I looked up at my father, still standing in the doorway, completely unmoved, completely certain he had done nothing wrong, and in that exact moment, something in me that had been bending for 31 years finally broke clean in half. Welcome back to Revenge Stories Unfolded. I'm Hannah, 31 years old, a single mother from Bozeman, Montana, and this is the story of the Christmas morning my father locked my daughter outside in the snow, and the 5 minutes that followed, which I will be telling my grandchildren about one day. If you have ever had to choose, in one single terrifying moment, between keeping the peace and protecting your child, you already know there is no choice at all. Stay with me to the end, because what happened to my father 5 minutes later, in front of our entire family, is something he will never live down. Before we go further, hit subscribe and ring that bell right now, because I post new stories every single week, and you do not want to miss what is coming. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever had to protect your child from your own family? Type "I protected her" in the comments. I am reading everyone tonight. My name is Hannah Reyes. I grew up in Bozeman, Montana, the only daughter of Robert and Janet Whitfield. My father spent 38 years as a foreman at a regional construction company before retiring. My mother, my stepmother technically, though she has been in my life since I was 6, ran the front desk at a dental office for 2 decades before retiring. I need to explain something about my father before I go any further, because none of what happened on Christmas morning makes sense without it. My father believes in discipline the way other people believe in religion. Not discipline as a tool, but discipline as a worldview, a complete philosophy of how the world should work. Rules exist. Rules get broken. Consequences follow swiftly and without negotiation. He raised me this way. I spent my childhood standing in corners, missing meals, sitting in cold cars while my friends went inside warm houses, all in the name of lessons that were supposedly being taught. I want to be honest with you. For most of my adult life, I told myself this had made me strong. I told myself the rigidity had given me discipline of my own. The kind that got me through nursing school as a single mother, the kind that let me work double shifts at the hospital and still show up to every single one of Lily's school events. I told myself my father's harshness was simply a different language of love, one I had learned to translate, even if I did not always enjoy the words. I do not believe that anymore. I have a daughter now, and there is a very specific moment that happens in every woman's life who grew up the way I did. The moment you watch a child experience something you used to call normal, and suddenly it does not look normal at all. It looks like exactly what it always was. Lily is 8 years old. She has my dark curly hair and her father's quick laugh, though her father has not been part of our lives since she was 2, a story for another time. She is gentle in the way some children just are, careful with animals, generous with her toys, the kind of kid who notices when another child is sitting alone at lunch and goes to sit with them. She is also 8, which means she sometimes runs in the house, which means she sometimes knocks things over, which means, on the Christmas morning I am about to tell you about, she bumped into a side table while chasing her cousin through my father's living room and knocked over a shelf of Janet's collectible snow globes, 40 years of careful collecting, gone in one accidental crash. It was an accident. I want that completely clear before I go one sentence further. My daughter did not do this on purpose. She was 8 years old, excited, running, the way every 8-year-old runs on Christmas morning when the whole day feels like electricity under your skin. My father did not see it that way. He has never seen anything that way. I need to tell you about my late husband, Marcus, before I go further into this story, because Marcus is the reason I had the strength to do what I eventually did on that porch. Marcus and I met in nursing school. He was 2 years ahead of me, already working as an ER nurse while finishing his 2nd degree in nurse anesthesia. He had the kind of calm that filled a room, the specific stillness of someone who had spent years in emergency rooms and learned that panic helps no one. We were married for 6 years before the accident that took him. A drunk driver on Highway 191, a night shift he was driving home from, a phone call I will never stop hearing in my memory, even though I was not there to hear it happen. I am telling you about Marcus because in our 6 years together, he taught me something my father never had the capacity to teach me. He taught me that love and softness were not opposites of strength. He used to say, "Hannah, the strongest thing a person can do is stay gentle in a world that keeps trying to make them hard." He said it about patience. He said it about colleagues. Eventually, watching him with Lily as a baby, I understood he was saying it about parenting too. Marcus never once raised his voice at Lily, not once in the 2 years he had with her before he died. He got down on the floor at her level. He explained things instead of issuing commands. When she cried, he held her instead of telling her to stop. I used to watch him do this and feel something complicated in my chest, something between gratitude and grief for the childhood I never got to have. When Marcus died, I made a promise to myself, standing at his graveside in February. The ground frozen so hard, they had to delay the burial by 2 days. I promised that whatever else happened, whatever grief and exhaustion and single motherhood threw at me, I would raise Lily the way Marcus would have wanted, with gentleness, with patience, with the kind of love that explains instead of punishes. For 6 years since his death, I have kept that promise as best I could. On that Christmas morning, standing on a porch with my daughter shaking in my arms, I understood that keeping that promise was about to require something I had never done before. It was going to require standing up to my father. We arrived at my father's house at 9 in the morning, as we did every year. Lily was wearing the red velvet dress my mother had bought her, the one with the small embroidered snowflakes along the hem that she had been talking about for 2 weeks. She had her hair in 2 braids that I had done at 6 in the morning while she sat on the bathroom counter eating a granola bar and telling me about a dream she'd had about flying reindeer. The house smelled like cinnamon and pine. My stepmother Janet had decorated every surface, the way she does every year. Garlands on the staircase, a Christmas village arranged on the mantel, and the shelf of snow globes in the front living room that she had been collecting since before I was born. One from every place she and my father had ever traveled together. My half-brother Tommy was there with his wife and their son Eli, who is 9, 1 year older than Lily, and the 2 of them have been inseparable since they could walk. Breakfast was good, genuinely good. We opened presents around 11, the way we always do, and for almost 3 hours it felt like an ordinary happy Christmas. Then the kids went to play while the adults cleared the table. I was in the kitchen with Janet, drying dishes, when I heard the crash. I came around the corner to see Lily standing frozen, hands over her mouth, 8 ceramic snow globes shattered across the hardwood floor in a spray of glitter water and broken glass. Eli was a few feet away, equally frozen, his hand still raised from where he had apparently been tossing a ball that Lily had been chasing when she clipped the side table. "It was an accident," I said immediately, already crouching to start gathering pieces, already reaching for Lily, who had started to cry. Lily, sweetheart, are you hurt? Did you cut yourself? She shook her head, tears streaming, looking at the destruction with the particular horror children get when they realize they have broken something that mattered. That is when my father walked in. I want to describe his face in that moment because I have thought about it many times since, and I think it tells you everything about what was actually happening in that house, which was never really about snow globes at all. He did not look angry the way a person looks angry when something unexpected and upsetting happens. He looked something closer to satisfied, like a man who had been waiting all day for an opportunity to prove a point he had already decided was true. Lily, his voice was flat, controlled, the voice he used on me, as a child, right before something I dreaded. What did you do? It was an accident, Grandpa. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. 40 years, he said, not to her, to the room, to all of us. 40 years of collecting, gone. Dad, I said, standing up, glass crunching under my shoes. She said she's sorry. It was an accident. Accidents have consequences, Hannah. That's how children learn. I felt the old fear rise in me, the specific muscle memory of being a child in this house, under this man's authority, and for one terrible second, I almost let it win. I almost said nothing, the way I had said nothing 1,000 times growing up, the way silence had always been the safest available option. Then I looked at Lily. She was looking at me, not at my father, at me, the way she has always looked at me since she was a baby, the way every child looks at their parent, in a moment of fear, certain that I would fix it, certain that whatever was about to happen, I would not let it touch her. Dad, I said, more firmly. She apologized. She's 8. Accidents happen. We'll replace what we can. You'll replace 40 years of memories with what? A gift card? He turned to Lily. Go to the porch. Think about what you did. It's 19 degrees outside, Dad. It's a porch, Hannah, not Antarctica. 5 minutes won't kill her. I felt the room go very still. Tommy was looking at the floor. Janet had her hand pressed to her mouth. Eli's mother had pulled him gently against her side, away from the scene. Nobody said anything. And before I could move, before I could put my body between my daughter and the front door, my father took Lily by the shoulder, walked her to the front hallway, and steered her outside onto the porch. I heard the deadbolt turn. I need you to stay right here, because what I did in the next 5 minutes is the part of this story that changed everything between my father and me forever. If you have ever felt that moment when a lifetime of staying quiet finally runs out, you need to see what happened next. Subscribe right now if you have not already, and drop a comment telling me, would you have stayed silent, or would you have done what I did? I do not remember crossing the kitchen. I remember being in the hallway with my hand already on the deadbolt, and I remember my father's hand closing around my wrist. Let her sit with it, Hannah. Let go of my arm. You're being dramatic. This is exactly the kind of soft parenting that's going to ruin that girl. I looked at my father's hand on my wrist, and I thought about every single time in my childhood that hand or one like it had held me in place while a lesson I never asked for was administered. I thought about cold cars and locked rooms and meals I never got to eat. I thought about 31 years of believing this was love. And then I thought about Marcus, on the floor with 2-year-old Lily, explaining instead of punishing, and I understood with total clarity that I had a choice in this exact second that I had never had as a child. I pulled my arm free. Dad, I am going to say this one time. If you do not open this door right now, I am calling the police and reporting that you left an 8-year-old child outside in 19-degree weather without a coat. You wouldn't. Watch me. He did not move. He stood there, arms crossed, testing whether I meant it, the way he had tested my resolve 1,000 times in my childhood, and always won. This time I did not blink. I pulled out my phone. I opened the keypad. I dialed the first 9. Hannah, I dialed the 1. Hannah, stop. My finger hovered over the final 1, and in that frozen second, through the small window in the front door, I saw Lily's knees buckle on the porch. I do not remember deciding to move. I remember being on the other side of the deadbolt with no memory of turning it, and I remember Lily collapsing into me, and I remember going down onto the cold porch boards wrapped around my shaking, sobbing daughter, while my father stood in the open doorway behind us, finally looking uncertain. I've got you, baby. I've got you. I do not know how long we stayed there. Long enough for Lily's breathing to slow, long enough for Janet to appear with a blanket, her face wet with tears, saying my name over and over, like an apology she could not fully form. Long enough for Tommy to come stand in the doorway, his jaw tight, looking at his father in a way I had never seen him look at him before. When I finally stood up, Lily wrapped in the blanket, her small body still trembling against my hip, I turned to face my father. He was standing in the doorway. I was standing on the porch. For the first time in 31 years, the positions were exactly reversed. You're going to listen to me now, I said, and you're not going to interrupt. He did not interrupt. I spent my entire childhood in this family, learning that love came with conditions. Those mistakes meant punishment. That being cold, being scared, being alone, those were lessons, not cruelty. I believed you for 31 years, Dad. I actually believed you. My voice was shaking, but it did not stop. And I am standing here right now, looking at my daughter shivering in a blanket because you locked her outside over broken glass, and I finally understand something I should have understood a long time ago. This was never about teaching anyone a lesson. This was about control. It was always about control. Hannah, I am not finished. I have never spoken to my father that way in my entire life. The words came from somewhere I did not know I had access to. Somewhere that had been waiting 31 years for permission. My daughter is not going to grow up the way I grew up. She is not going to learn that mistakes are punished with cold and fear and silence. She is going to learn that when she breaks something, she apologizes, and the people who love her help her clean it up, and nobody makes her stand outside to think about her worth as a person. My father's face had gone through several expressions in the space of those 30 seconds. Defensiveness, anger, and then, somewhere near the end, something that looked almost like recognition. You locked an 8-year-old outside in 19-degree weather, I said, over snow globes. I want you to actually hear that sentence. Say it back to me. He did not say it back to me. That's what I thought, I said, because even you know how it sounds. I looked past him into the house, at Janet crying in the doorway, at Tommy standing with his arms crossed in a posture I recognized because it was the same posture I had been carrying my entire life without realizing it. We're leaving, I said. Lily and I are leaving, and we are not coming back to this house until you can explain to me, honestly, why an 8-year-old's safety was worth less to you in that moment than your wife's snow globes. I did not wait for an answer. I carried my daughter to the car, buckled her into her seat with hands that were finally starting to shake from the cold and the adrenaline both, and I drove away from my father's house on Christmas afternoon with the heat blasting and my daughter's small hand gripping mine across the console. Lily was quiet for the first 10 minutes of the drive. I let her be quiet. I had learned, in 6 years of solo parenting, that children process things on their own timeline, not yours. Finally, somewhere around the highway exit for our neighborhood, she said, very small, Mommy, was I bad? I pulled into the empty parking lot of the closed grocery store near our exit and put the car in park, because some conversations cannot happen while you're driving. I turned to face her fully. No, baby, you were not bad. You had an accident. Accidents happen to everyone, every single day. Breaking something by accident is not the same thing as being bad. But Grandpa said, Grandpa was wrong. I had never said those words about my father out loud to anyone, let alone to my own child. They felt enormous coming out of my mouth, like a door swinging open on a room I had kept locked my entire life. Grandpa was wrong to put you outside. Grandpa was wrong to be more upset about the glass than about you being cold and scared. That was not fair, and it was not okay, and I am so sorry that happened to you. Lily was quiet for a moment, processing in the way 8-year-olds process things, with their whole small faces. Is Grandpa going to be mad at you now? Maybe, I said honestly, but baby, here is something I need you to understand, and I need you to remember this for the rest of your life. There is no version of being loved by me that involves you standing outside in the cold because you made a mistake. None. Never. I will choose you every single time. Do you understand? She nodded, small and serious. I love you more than I have ever loved anything in this world, I said. More than being polite, more than keeping the peace, more than anyone's feelings, including my own father's. You come first, always. She climbed across the console and hugged me so hard I felt her heartbeat against my chest. Finally steady, finally calm. We drove the rest of the way home with Christmas music playing low on the radio, and when we got there, I made hot chocolate, and we watched her favorite movie in pajamas, and it was, despite everything, one of the best Christmas nights we have ever had together. Stay with me, because what happened over the following months between my father and me is not what you might expect, and the way it ended will surprise you. Subscribe to Revenge Stories Unfolded if you have not already. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to choose your child over your parent in one single moment? For 6 weeks after Christmas, my father did not call. I did not call him either. I want to be honest about that. Part of me was waiting to see if he would understand what he had done, without me having to explain it to him a second time. Part of me was simply too exhausted, too protective of the fragile peace I had built for Lily and myself, to invite the conflict back into our lives. Janet called twice. Both times she cried, both times she apologized on his behalf, which I gently told her was not her apology to give. She told me, the second time, that my father had not spoken about Christmas at all since we left, that he had gone quiet in a way she had not seen from him in their 25 years of marriage. Tommy called once. He told me he had been thinking about our childhood differently since that day. He told me he remembered being locked in his room for hours over much smaller infractions, and he had never let himself name it as anything other than discipline, until he watched it happen to Lily, and saw it clearly for the first time. He said, "I think we both grew up believing something that wasn't true, Han. I think we believed it was love." I cried after that call for a long time. I went back to work, picked up extra shifts at the hospital the way I always do in January when the holiday bills come due. Lily went back to school. We settled into the quiet rhythm of our small life together, just the two of us, the way it had been since Marcus died. I did not regret what I had said to my father. I want to be clear about that. I would say every word of it again, but I will admit there was a grief underneath the certainty, the specific grief of watching a relationship you spent your whole life trying to maintain finally show you its true shape. In late January, a letter arrived in the mail, my father's handwriting on the envelope, the careful, blocky print he learned in a construction trade school decades ago. I sat at my kitchen table for 10 minutes before I opened it. Inside was a single page, handwritten, no typed apology card, no store-bought sentiment, just his words. He wrote that he had spent 6 weeks thinking about that Christmas morning. He wrote that he had grown up the way his own father raised him, with rules enforced through cold and silence, and that he had never once questioned whether that was the right way to raise children, because it was the only way he had ever known. He wrote that watching me carry Lily off that porch, watching the look on my face, had been the first time in his life he had seen himself clearly from the outside. He wrote, "I do not know how to be a different kind of man at 63 years old. But I know I do not want to be the reason my granddaughter grows up afraid of cold porches and locked doors the way you did. I am sorry, Hannah. I am sorrier than I know how to say in a letter, which is probably why it has taken me 6 weeks to write one." He asked if he could see Lily again, on whatever terms I needed to set. I read that letter 4 times. Then I called him. It has been 8 months since that Christmas morning. My father and Lily see each other now, but on very specific terms that I set and that he has, to his credit, respected completely. He comes to our house instead of us going to his. He has, in 8 months, never once raised his voice at her, never once threatened a consequence, never once reached for the old language of control that used to be his only tool. It is not perfect. I want to be honest with you about that, because I think the stories that pretend everything resolves into a neat bow are not actually helping anyone. My father is 63 years old, and decades of a particular way of being do not dissolve in 8 months because of one letter and one painful Christmas. There are still moments where I see the old instinct flicker across his face, the urge to correct, to control, and I watch him visibly catch himself and choose something different. That catching himself is the whole story, actually. That is what growth looks like at 63, not perfection, just the willingness to notice the old pattern and choose against it, one moment at a time. Janet still collects snow globes. She bought a new shelf, lower this time, further from the path where children run on Christmas morning. She told me, with a small laugh that had real grief underneath it, that she had finally understood the globes were never as important as she had spent 40 years believing they were. Tommy and I are closer now than we have been since childhood. We talk every week. We have started, slowly, carefully, comparing notes on the childhood we both survived, naming things out loud that we spent decades calling normal. Lily still talks about that Christmas sometimes, in the matter-of-fact way children process hard things. She told her school counselor about it during a unit on feelings, apparently, which is how I found out the school had a counselor who specializes in family transitions, a detail I am grateful for in ways I cannot fully express. Last week, my father came over for dinner. Lily showed him a drawing she made at school, a family tree with very simple stick figures, and he is on it, drawn carefully in purple crayon, standing next to a stick figure labeled Grandpa, with a small smile. He kept that drawing in his shirt pocket for the rest of the visit. When he left, he hugged me at the door, something he had not done since I was a small child myself, and he said, "Thank you for not giving up on me." I have thought about that sentence many times since. I did not do it for him. I want to be honest about that too. I did it because Lily deserves a grandfather who is trying to be better, if he is willing to do the work. And because forgiveness, real forgiveness, the kind that comes with boundaries instead of amnesia, turned out to be something I was capable of giving even after everything. My name is Hannah Reyes. I am a nurse, a widow, and a mother, and on a Christmas morning 8 months ago, I pulled my 8-year-old daughter off a freezing porch and stood up to 31 years of silence in the space of 5 minutes. I do not regret a single word I said that day. If you are sitting somewhere right now, carrying the weight of a childhood that taught you love comes with conditions, I want you to hear me say this directly. You get to choose differently. You get to be the one who breaks the pattern. It will not be easy, and it will not always be welcomed, but it is possible. I am living proof. Your children deserve warmth, not metaphorically, literally. They deserve to never, ever wonder whether they are loved enough to be let back inside. Be the door that opens. If this story moved you, share it right now with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to Revenge Stories Unfolded, because next week's story involves a grandmother who discovered the real reason her son had been keeping her grandchildren away for 3 years, and what she found will break your heart and then put it back together. Hit the bell so you do not miss it. Drop a comment below and tell me, what is one thing you are doing differently than how you were raised? I will be reading every single comment tonight.